When a corrupt cop crosses paths with a relentless DEA agent, he learns too late that the hunter has become the hunted. It was well past midnight when DEA agent Sarah Reeves parked her unmarked sedan across from the dilapidated warehouse. Rain pattered steadily on the roof, obscuring the grimy windows of the abandoned building where her target was supposedly operating. 6 months of investigation had led to this moment, tracking a drug pipeline that extended from Colombia all the way to these forgotten streets. What made this case particularly troubling was the involvement of someone within law enforcement, someone who had managed to stay hidden in the shadows while facilitating the movement of millions in product. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Sarah adjusted her earpiece and checked her service weapon one more time. Her long brown hair was pulled back tightly, her face free of makeup. Nothing about her appearance suggested she was federal law enforcement, which was precisely the point. Tonight was about observation only, gathering evidence before the full task force would move in next week. She'd volunteered for the surveillance shift, knowing how crucial these final pieces of intelligence could be. "Base, this is Reeves," she said quietly into her collar mic. "I've got eyes on the location, no movement yet." The radio crackled with her handler's response. "Copy that, Reeves. Remember, observation only. We're still building the case." What Sarah didn't know was that her presence had already been noticed. Officer Derek Mercer, a 10-year veteran of the local police force, had been tipped off about federal interest in his side operation. From his patrol car parked 2 blocks away, he watched Sarah's vehicle through binoculars, his jaw tightening with every passing minute. At 38, Mercer had long ago abandoned whatever ideals had led him into law enforcement. The extra money had started small, just looking the other way at first, then actively helping the cartel move their product. Now, he was in too deep to simply walk away. 3 hours into her surveillance, Sarah noticed headlights approaching slowly, a police cruiser rolling down the empty street with deliberate purpose. Her instincts immediately flared. Something wasn't right. This wasn't a random patrol. The car moved with too much intent, slowing as it approached her position. Inside his cruiser, Officer Mercer felt a surge of adrenaline. If this was indeed a federal agent, he needed to identify them, figure out how much they knew, and report back to his cartel contacts. At worst, he might need to make someone disappear tonight. He'd done it before. The cruiser's spotlight suddenly blinded Sarah, flooding her car with harsh white light. She squinted, raising a hand to shield her eyes as the police car pulled alongside. The window rolled down to reveal Officer Mercer, his face arranged in a practiced look of professional suspicion. "Step out of the vehicle, please," he called, his voice carrying the unmistakable authority of law enforcement. Sarah hesitated. This wasn't how she'd planned the night. Revealing herself as DEA now could compromise months of work. She decided to play along, at least temporarily. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked, stepping out into the rain, leaving her credentials hidden in her jacket pocket. Mercer approached slowly, one hand resting on his holstered weapon. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in this area. Mind telling me what you're doing parked here at 3 in the morning?" Sarah had prepared a cover story for exactly this scenario. "Car trouble," she said with a convincing look of frustration. "I pulled over to wait for my boyfriend to come pick me up. Should be here any minute." Officer Mercer's eyes narrowed. He didn't believe her for a second. "License and registration," Mercer demanded, his voice hardening. Sarah complied, handing over a carefully prepared ID with her real first name but a false last name. As Mercer examined it under his flashlight, she discreetly pressed a small button on her watch, a signal to her backup team that something had gone wrong. "Sarah Johnson," Mercer read aloud, clearly suspicious. "This address is in Arlington. You're a long way from home in this part of town." Sarah shrugged. "Like I said, car trouble. I was visiting a friend." Mercer walked slowly around her vehicle, shining his flashlight through the windows. When he reached the back seat, he paused, spotting her surveillance equipment partially covered by a jacket. "Pop the trunk," he ordered, his voice suddenly cold and certain. Sarah knew she was caught. The trunk contained more specialized equipment that would immediately identify her as law enforcement. She had seconds to make a decision: reveal herself as DEA or maintain her cover and deal with the consequences. "Sir, I don't think that's necessary for a simple, 'Pop the trunk now,'" Mercer repeated, his hand moving to his weapon, "or I'll place you under arrest." Sarah stood her ground, rain soaking through her clothes. "On what charge?" With surprising speed, Mercer grabbed her arm, spinning her around and slamming her against the car. "Suspicious activity, resisting an officer, and I'm willing to bet. There's something interesting in that trunk. That's enough for now." The cold metal of handcuffs closed around Sarah's wrists before she could react. As he roughly secured them, Mercer leaned close and whispered, "I know who you are. You feds should learn to be more discreet." Sarah's blood ran cold. This wasn't a random patrol officer. This was their leak, the corrupt cop they'd been hunting. Mercer shoved Sarah into the back of his patrol car, confiscating her phone and keys. He'd search her vehicle thoroughly once he had her secured. If she was federal, there would be evidence. Then he'd make a call and follow whatever instructions came next. "You're making a serious mistake," Sarah said calmly from the back seat, as Mercer started driving. Not toward the police station, but deeper into the abandoned industrial area. Mercer chuckled. "No, you made the mistake coming here alone. Who else knows you're here?" Sarah remained silent, her mind racing. The tracker in her watch was active. Her team would realize something was wrong when she didn't check in, but would they find her? In time? Mercer was clearly taking her somewhere isolated. Silent treatment, huh? Mercer smirked, watching her in the rearview mirror. "That's fine. We'll have plenty of time to talk where we're going." The patrol car pulled up to a small, windowless concrete building that had once been an electrical substation. Mercer killed the engine and turned around to face Sarah. "Last chance to make this easy. Who are you working for and what do they know?" Sarah finally made her decision. "My name is Special Agent Sarah Reeves, Drug Enforcement Administration. Badge number 8741. Mercer's face registered shock, then anger. DEA was worse than he'd expected. It meant this was federal, not local, a much bigger investigation. "You're lying," he snarled, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. "My credentials are in my left inside jacket pocket," Sarah replied evenly. "And you should know, Officer Mercer, that you're the target of a 6-month Joint Task Force investigation. We have everything: money transfers, meetings, phone calls. Your cartel friends can't help you now." Mercer's face paled as he reached into the car and roughly searched Sarah's jacket, finding her DEA credentials exactly where she said they would be. He stared at the badge, his mind racing through his limited options. "Get out," he ordered, yanking her from the back seat. Inside the abandoned building, he pushed Sarah into a metal chair, keeping her handcuffed. The single bare bulb overhead cast harsh shadows across their faces. "Here's what happens now," Mercer said, pacing nervously. "You're going to tell me exactly what the DEA knows, who else is involved in the investigation, and when they're planning to move. Then maybe, you walk away from this." Sarah looked directly into his eyes. "That's not how this works. Mercer, you arrested a federal agent in the course of her duties. That alone is enough to end your career. Add kidnapping and your cartel connections, and you're looking at life without parole. But there's another option." Mercer stopped pacing. "I'm listening." "Cooperate," Sarah said simply. "Give us names, dates, shipment details. Help us take down the entire operation. We can offer witness protection, a new identity." Mercer laughed bitterly. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. These people don't forgive betrayal." "And you have no idea what's happening right now," Sarah countered. At that moment, the sound of approaching helicopters became audible, growing louder by the second. Mercer rushed to the single dirty window and saw flashing lights approaching from multiple directions. "The watch," Sarah explained calmly. "It has a panic button and GPS tracker. Standard issue for undercover work. My team has been tracking us. Since you put me in your car, they've heard everything through the microphone." Mercer drew his weapon and pointed it at Sarah, his hand shaking. "You set me up." "No, you did that yourself," Sarah replied without fear. But it's not too late to make the right choice. The building was suddenly flooded with light from outside as tactical teams took position. A voice over a loudspeaker called out, "Officer Derek Mercer, this is the DEA. We have the building surrounded. Release Agent Reeves and come out with your hands up." Mercer's face twisted with rage and desperation. He'd been so careful for years, and now everything was collapsing around him. "They'll kill me in prison," he muttered. "The cartel has people everywhere." "Like I said, witness protection is on the table," Sarah repeated. "But only if you surrender now." For a moment, the only sound was the beating of helicopter rotors overhead and Mercer's ragged breathing. Then, slowly, he lowered his weapon. "The keys to the cuffs are in my right pocket," he said flatly. Sarah stood as Mercer uncuffed her. Their eyes met one final time. "How long have you known it was me?" he asked. 3 months, Sarah replied. "We needed evidence that would stand up in court. We needed you to lead us to your contacts. And tonight you delivered exactly what we needed." Sarah took Mercer's weapon and directed him toward the door. As they stepped outside into a sea of tactical officers, FBI agents, and fellow DEA personnel, Mercer finally understood the full scope of his miscalculation. What he had seen as an opportunity to eliminate a threat had instead become the final nail in his coffin. Mercer was quickly taken into custody as Sarah was greeted by her supervisor, Special Agent Thompson. "You took one hell of a risk," Thompson said, handing her a towel for the rain. Sarah watched as Mercer was placed in the back of a transport vehicle. "Sometimes you have to take risks to catch the bigger fish," she replied. "His cartel contacts will be scrambling now. We need to move quickly." Thompson nodded. "Teams are already deploying to the locations you identified. By morning, this entire network will be dismantled." As dawn broke over the city, Sarah sat in the back of an ambulance being checked by paramedics despite her protests that she was fine. She watched as evidence teams processed both her car and Mercer's patrol vehicle. What had started as a routine surveillance had evolved into the final act of a months-long operation. The corrupt officer who thought he was clever enough to eliminate a threat had instead sealed his own fate, never realizing until too late that he had been the target all along.